Somebody's on the line and it hasn't actually shown up yet.
That's okay.
But I'm just letting the guys in the studio.
Well, I have a
know.
topic and you have some rants. So why don't you do your rants?
Rants? I don't ever rant.
No, that can't be.
I never rant. Actually, there's a bit of a discussion that's taken place after the last episode of the Nonprofits, and we'll be continuing it on a little bit on this Saturday's Nonprofits. We didn't get a lot of complaints, just one, and that's how seriously I take the feedback from the fans. If somebody thinks something was inappropriate, I want to discuss it and find out. And as I am prone to ranting and getting passionate about certain things on both shows, on occasions, in order to add a little extra oomph to a rant, I might utter a word or two that some people might find objectionable. I don't do it very often on the Atheist Experience. I think there's a handful of F-bombs that made their way out. But on the last Nonprofit show, I was speaking about the campaign and particularly the negative campaign ads from Liddy Dole against Kay Hagan that used atheism, and atheist, and godless as dirty words, essentially, as if that was something to be ashamed of. And I realized that she's playing into a negative stereotype that exists throughout much of American culture. And when the ads first came out, I took her to task for it without getting too mean and supported Kay Hagan. And then Kay Hagan did something to make me embarrassed and ashamed that I'd bothered to defend her. Instead of coming out and doing what she should have done, which was say, I don't happen to be an atheist, but it's not a dirty word, and I'm here to represent all constituents, no matter what their religious views are. And so I take no shame in the fact that I met with people of variety beliefs. Instead, she did no, I'm not an atheist. How dare you call me an atheist? Look, here's my preacher. I teach Sunday school. And so I called her a word that starts with a T.
I see.
So that'll end up being discussed a little bit on next week Nonprofits. However, that's not what I want to rant about today. I will take some pleasure in, despite the fact that I was a little miffed at Kay Hagan for running from the A word like it was the plague, that she did win that race, and Liddy Dole, who sunk to abominable levels of negative campaign ads, got her ass handed to her. And
what state was that, Matt?
North Carolina.
North Carolina?
Mm-hmm. It was one of the Carolinas. I'm pretty sure it was North Carolina.
Yeah.
But what else happened this week with regard to the elections?
Well, we were watching a whole bunch of different races that
Right.
had something to do with theology and religion, right?
Yes. And obviously, I mean, there's no reason to go into great detail over the presidential race where Obama and Biden were elected. They're now serving president-elect and vice president-elect in preparation to be sworn in January. This was a very significant election that I don't want to downplay the historic importance.
Oh, yeah.
The idea that Americans have gotten to a point, perhaps it was that they were so disgruntled with the previous administration that race no longer was an issue. I'd like to think that we're at a point where we can elect, anyone. As I mentioned on my Facebook page the other day, I don't think I'll be satisfied until there's a black, Jewish, lesbian president who's an atheist.
Well, I don't care who they are as long as they do a good
Right.
job, and that's the next goal, I think, is to make sure our new politicians do a good job up there,
Right.
regardless of whether they got a D or an R by their name.
Yes, absolutely. But there were a couple of things that disappointed me about this particular election, and I want to hit those real quick, and then we'll get to Don and the calls that are waiting. So I'll make this a short rant. Proposition 8 in California was a proposition that proposed to alter the California Constitution to state that only marriages between men and women would be considered legal in the state of
Now,
California.
we had a similar one here in Texas a few years back.
Yeah.
It was much the same thing.
And there are a number of states who passed things like this. The reason why it was more disappointing in California than anywhere else is because Californians had just recently allowed gay marriage. And
Via a Supreme Court ruling.
Right.
Right.
And this was a backlash from some conservative, fundamentalist evangelicals primarily. But the thing that was most disappointing to me about it is that it was among the demographics for those who voted in favor of Prop 8, 70% of African Americans voted in favor of it. So on the same day, in the same year, in the same state that was critical to electing an African American as the next president of the United States, this particular minority, who has been wronged for so long in such abundance, overcame their own obstacles to help elect an African American to office, to change the outlook, change the face of America in the eyes of the world. And yet at the same time, 70% of them essentially disregarded another minority's rights and set up a constitutional amendment that prevents true equality. There's an irony there that is baffling and a little offensive.
It's sad.
But that's not what I want to rant about. That's what some people thought I was going to rant about. I'm disappointed. It's sad. What I'm going to rant about is Arkansas. The backwards-ass redneck morons in Arkansas who don't like kids or are so afraid of gay people that they decided, screw the kids. What they did was they put a proposition on their ballot this election to ban adoptions to anybody who is not legally married. Now, this was clearly and transparently a way of preventing gays from adopting. This is something we've seen in a number of states, but in practice what it does is it means that any single person who would like to adopt a child, it doesn't matter if you have the means, the ability, or the desire to, you can't adopt anymore. It means that heterosexual couples that aren't married, it doesn't matter if you have the means, the ability, or the desire to, you can't adopt kids anymore. Homosexual couples, doesn't matter how good you are, how financially stable you are, what kind of environment you can have, you don't get to adopt either. And that was the critical mistake of the ignorant, backwards morons in Arkansas. Because instead of just banning gay marriage, they decided to gay adoption. They decided to ban adoption from all of these people, which now means they've got a bigger base of people to fight when this thing comes back around. So I'm not disheartened by their ignorant and thoughtless and unconscionable act of not giving a damn about kids. There are tons of kids desperately in need of adoption, and all they want is a good home, and they don't give a damn if it's a single person, a heterosexual couple, a homosexual couple. They're just tired of being buried in the system, and the older they are, the harder it is to happen. And you people in Arkansas voted for a proposition that hurts kids because you're afraid of gays. That is one of the most despicable things that happened in this election. It's terrible, yes, that Prop 8 went ahead and passed in California, reversing a California Supreme Court decision and setting us back a little bit in the battle for equality. But your fear, bigotry, and hatred for things that are different from you or scary or violate your Bible have put real children in jeopardy. And what I'd like to see is other states who aren't as backwards as you come into Arkansas and relieve those children who are burdened by your state's adoption system and move them to states that actually give a damn about kids, who are willing to place kids in homes where they'll be well cared for, where they're desired, where they're loved, and where they're not exposed to ignorant bigotry. And that's the rant for today.